Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And tonight, I really didn't have a topic of discussion. And for the first time in coming into my life, oh my goodness, for the longest time, I actually stalled for like 3 seconds before hitting that live button, going, oh my goodness, what are we going to talk about? And you know what? In that, I thought maybe, right? In the second, I thought this is that maybe we should just talk about having faith, having a little bit of trust in ourselves, trust that we can show up in whatever capacity, right? Whatever moment we're having, because we can have a different moment from moment to moment, right? We could be in a good mood, a bad mood. All of a sudden, somebody could be crashing in. We could get that phone call. And actually, that's a pretty good one because today I went into a little bit of panic mode. Now, I haven't gone into those panic modes, oh my goodness, for the longest time. But I think it had a little bit to be uh, because I was a little bit mixed up when I got up this morning. I woke up in the middle of the night and I stayed up pretty much right until morning. I didn't get up except maybe to go to the washroom or get something to drink. But I laid in bed that entire, oh my goodness, it must have been for at least 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours at the very least. And I just laid there, and that never happens to me. Usually I'm a really good sleeper. Yes, as you get older, you do get up, you wake up in the middle of the night and you go, okay, time to head off to the washroom, right? But then you just come right back and you crash. And I'm always up by 7 o'clock in the morning. Now, because I got up in the middle of the night, my alarm went off at 7 o'clock in the morning. I turned it off. I expected I was just going to throw my legs over the bed and put my slippers on and start my day. And that wasn't the case. And I was really screwed because of that, because I didn't get up until 10 o'clock in the morning. I slept really, really hard. And I'm not making myself feel guilty about that, but I'm taking note because I have to trust there are reasons for everything in our lives. And in trusting that, I got up today and I felt a little bit off. I felt like my life was a little bit topsy turvy when there was no reason to think that way. I had gotten all the official things done that I had to get done yesterday, and today was just going to be kind of a day to just enjoy myself, right? Have a nice meal, do a few chores around the house, and not go out at all because I went out for quite a bit yesterday. And so today was just going to be for myself. But when I got up, I just felt out of sorts. I felt confused as to what to do. And, it is in that faith that and in that trust that we don't have to be going 100 miles an hour all the time. It's okay not to know what we're doing. I still got things done today. I managed to get to the store and come home. But when I came home, I had a little bit of a panic attack. I don't know if you would call it a panic attack. Well, I'm going to call it a panic attack because I freaked out a little bit because I couldn't find my phone. It wasn't in my purse, and I thought I had left it at one of the stores that I was at today. And I just went kind of frantic and I just said, okay, Cindy, everything's going to be okay, right? Calm down, go slow, right? And then in that next few moments, I did go slow. and I just kind of backtracked from entering in through the door. And it turned out I didn't even take my phone with me when I went to the store. It was exactly where I left it. But when I came home from the store, I put my bags, my bags on top of it. So I didn't recognize that it was there. But it kind of made my heart putter a little bit because, right, it's an expensive phone. I'm not in a position to replace the phone right now. Even though I do have a second phone, I really enjoy having the newer one, right? And I know I could probably activate the old one and it would probably do me just fine. But sometimes it's in that state of mind that I would have felt like I was going backwards a little bit. You know what I mean? That I was falling behind, that maybe my life was crashing out on me, especially when I was kind of spaced out from sleeping in a little bit today, kind of spaced out my thoughts because, usually I'm a really good sleeper and I couldn't do anything except lay in my bed last night. And in that, it just kind of messed with my sleeping habit uh, today. And probably that's the worst when it comes to my sleeping habits. And it hasn't been like that. Oh my goodness, I would have to say for years and years, right? And it's something that I pride myself. It's in the consistency. It is in the repetitiveness. It's saying, Cindy, it's bedtime, and then just going to bed. When I first started waking up to some of these ideas, I let that voice in my head say, okay, Cindy, it's time to go to bed. Because I've always been a night owl. I always, right, working bars and nightclubs and night shifts, it was on the norm for me to stay up all night. I kind of enjoyed it, having the world to myself when everybody else was asleep. But, in learning to be more accountable to myself and, learning about routines and consistency was one of the first lessons that I ever learned. And it served me so well. But in those consistencies, there were a few things that I learned how important it was to listen to myself. And so I started practicing. And it didn't take me long. I think, within a week, 2 weeks, I went from being 100% nocturnal. We're talking so nocturnal that I would be going to bed at 7 o'clock in the morning and then sleeping all day and waking up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and then just going back to doing whatever I was doing. It was usually at that time TV, right? I haven't had a TV in 6 years. In those um, consistencies, I knew that I was addicted to reality TV. I was a Big Brother fan. I like Survivor. Oh my goodness, I haven't watched TV for so long. I can't even remember what other shows that I really, really liked. But I did recognize that I watched too much television. And then in applying myself and waking up to some of these ideas, I really wanted to treat it like I was a serious student in it, that I was moving towards something. What that something was, I have no idea. But I listened to myself. And I remembered, it was like 12 o'clock at night. And it was probably every night for a week. And I had this idea, Cindy, go to bed, right? And I would shut everything down and it'd be midnight. And I'm going, oh my goodness, I'm just starting my day and I'm going to bed. And then after about a week, I was kind of proud of myself that I was able to apply myself into a regular sleeping habit. I had to use my alarm in the morning because part of that routine of going to bed at midnight was to train myself to start my day. first thing in the morning. So I set my alarm for 7 a.m. That was 6 years ago, and my alarm still goes off at 7 a.m. Now, yes, I'll hit that snooze button, and sometimes I'll lay in bed for a half an hour in contemplation, right? Just feeling out my emotions, my thoughts, my goals, right? And after a while, it just became routine for me. And right, 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm throwing my legs over the bed and I'm putting on my slippers and making a cup of coffee and turning on the computer and just starting my day. And I tell you the truth, after doing that, I would say for over 30 years, being totally 100% nocturnal. I mean, when I worked bars and nightclubs, I wouldn't get home until 4:30 in the morning, right? After cleanup and cash out. And then, right, I would just stay up. I would make my husband's lunch. I would clean up whatever mess he made in the house when I wasn't home. And then I would wake him up in the morning, make him a cup of coffee. He wasn't big on breakfast or anything. Make him a cup of coffee, give him his lunch, give him a kiss, and send him off to work, right? He was in the military, and quite often he wasn't even home, right? He'd go away for months at a time, and I didn't mind that in all actuality. I'm not going to trail too far down that branch, but I appreciated that, being the person that I was and loving my alone time and being nocturnal, right? That I could appreciate having that time for myself late at night. And that carried on for at least 30 years, and it's only maybe been about 6 or 7 years, and I am totally compacted in my regular sleeping now. So when I said last night that I didn't sleep very well, I slept well till maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and then I was up until 7 o'clock in the morning when I turned my alarm off when it went off. But instead of throwing my legs over the bed, I thought I was just going to lay there a few minutes because I was exhausted. I didn't get enough sleep, right? So I thought I would just lay there, do my contemplation thing, and then next thing you know, I'm waking up, right? I don't have my glasses. I don't know what time it is, but I could just tell by the traffic on the streets and how light it is outside that I did fall back to sleep. And when I got up, I was just kind of disassociated. Is that the idea? Not really knowing what to do with myself, even though there's lots of things that I could do. I didn't want to do anything, right? And sometimes we treat ourselves badly because, right, we feel like we should be doing something, but we're not doing something in the moment, right? Or we're putting things off, or we're dragging our butts in what we have to do. But that's okay, because when that's needed, it is needed. And so, I was in my head a little bit today as to why. And also in remembering a little bit as I was waking up the situation that I was in my dream, right? And that's something that's just recently been coming back into my life because I've never been a dreamer, right? Not at least since I was 20 or 30 years old at the very least. And I'm 64 years old now. And I would have to say for 20 or 30 years, I never dreamed. And if I did dream, they say everybody dreams because they can tell by your eyes fluttering underneath your eyelids, right? But I've never remembered my dreams. But as of late, I've been getting little taste and little remembrance of things. And because, I take note. I take lots of notes, but I also take note of things, right? And I take note in the lessons, and I take note of what they want me to take note of. And so again, I was in my head over it. and I was out of sorts, and that was the way it is. And so I went into a little panic mode over losing my phone. And again, that was something that I wasn't familiar with for the longest time, right? There are moments where I go, "Oh, where are my keys?" right? But I know I got into my apartment and they're in there, in here somewheres, right? So it's just a matter of applying myself to find them. But it is when you come out of routines. Routines are so helpful. Hello, Tammy. I don't know how well you're set in routines, but there are lots of things that I'm set in routine in. I'm set in routine in one of the first things I do every morning is I make my bed, right? At first, it was just to that one small thing that I could do to make me feel proud of myself that I accomplished something in the morning, right? I was proud of myself that I was waking up first thing in the morning and going to bed at a decent time. Over the past few months, I've even knocked that back even an hour. And lots of times I want to go to bed at 10:30 and I look at the clock and, oh, Cindy, that's too early. You could stay up to 11:30 and then you can go to bed. But now I'm not feeling bad about it. If I feel okay, it's time to go to bed. It's kind of like those that same thing, Cindy said, okay, go to bed. I've been allowing myself to go to bed at 10:30 or 11 o'clock, which is a little bit earlier than what I have been. And saying that right now, that could also be why I'm a little bit off in my sleeping habits, because if I am going to bed a little bit earlier, it makes sense that I would be waking up earlier too. And we also know that as you mature, you don't need as much sleep as you did when you were younger, right? I was 8 to 10 hour. I love my sleep. Sleep was absolutely amazing, right? And always felt energized. And I believe my good health, a big part of that is because I attribute it to being such a good sleeper. My sister is somebody. What did they call them when you don't sleep well? An insomniac. Is that what it is? An insomniac. She doesn't sleep well at all. She'll get up at 1 o'clock in the morning and she'll do that. Go to bed at 7 o'clock in the morning all the time. She'll do that. And when she was working and she was an executive, right, as salesperson, and she had a very, very stressful job. And because she was very competitive, uh, she was competing against other salesmen, not just in the city, but all across North America. She was very renowned as being a very top salesman. And she was under so much stress. And I couldn't imagine, she was really good at her job, but I couldn't even imagine how good she would have been at her job if she did sleep 8 hours a day, right? And it is in that consistency, right? And routine and recognizing, when it's time to start something new or to add a little bit extra onto your plate. We talked little bit about that this week, about expanding, right? And stretching yourself out. And, you've heard that saying, get out of your comfort zone, because when you're comfortable and when things are easy breezy and things are down packed, well, that's the best time to add more to the plate, right? To add more to the plate. And I'm actually thinking now that maybe that's what it was, because I have been going to bed a little bit earlier than my midnight, right? I sleep 7 hours solid, right? Except for that 1 minute I get up in the middle of the night, and then I'm right back to sleep. And, I feel good about it. And if you guys have hung out with me for any length of time, it's one thing that I pride myself on is my good health. Because, I look around at the people around me and they all seem to have issues even within my own family. Like my father had congenital heart disease, my mother had 12 different types of osteoporosis, my grandmother had diabetes, two of my sisters have diabetes, there's arthritis going on, heart disease, like, and then I say, oh my goodness, I get a pimple and I think my life is falling apart because it's not the norm for me. So anything that's not the norm for me, I do tend to be on it, right? I'll be doing online research. If it's a health issue, I won't hesitate to go see a doctor. I haven't been to a doctor in a long time. I think the last time I went to see a doctor was when I broke my arm. Am I thinking I broke my arm? Yeah, I think I or broke my wrist at the very least. And that was the last time. That was years ago that happened. But I guess maybe it's that reminder, okay, Cindy, right? Maybe it's time for checkup because I am only human. Sometimes I think I'm invincible. Sometimes I think that whoever or whatever gave me that good health so I could put up with what I had to put up with in my life. But also, yesterday, it's funny that I'm saying that when I was over at my sister's, right? And, I just kind of went 100 miles an hour and I was happy to do it. But I went 100 miles an hour and I was sweeping floors and washing floors and making dinner and dusting and cleaning the bathroom. And I was just like, it felt really good. And then I broke her broom. So I had to run over to the Canadian Tire so I could get her a new broom and a new mop head for her mop, and she just looked at me in just putting on my coat to run off to the store. And she goes, Cindy, I have no idea where you get that energy from. It just makes me tired just looking at you jumping up there because I hung my coat up on the closer on the door because there were the closet was full. There was nowhere to put my coat, so I just kind of jumped up and I hung it up there. But I had to jump to try to unhook it from that. And she goes, it just made me exhausted just watching you getting all geared up in the snow pants and the jacket and stuff just to run and get her a broom, which I was happy. I was happy to do, but it made me think, maybe that's why, right? Whoever, whatever gave me that good health is so that I could take care of the people that I care about, right? They care about me, but they care about me in their own strengths. You know what I mean? Like we okay, to go into filling gaps. We talked about that I think last week about filling each other's gaps. Where I'm strong at, somebody else might not be as strong. And it's not a matter of doing it for them, but it's about being that example for somebody, or it's about, you know, doing it for them until they're back on their feet. But then at the same time, you want them to be able to handle it, because what happens if something happens to me, right? And they don't have me to resolve that issue. You want to make sure, and the same way around, that somebody, if something happened to somebody else and I totally relied on that person for that thing, because I didn't know how to do it, but they knew how to do it. So they just took care of that for me. And that caused me lots of problems. I lived that way for the most part of my life, not to bother to learn how to take care of myself. My needs were taken care of. The roof over my head was taken care of. The food across my table was taken care of, right? I need a little bit extra money for anything, that was just taken care of. And then, it leaves me weak, and it makes it so that I don't feel that I have to take care of those needs myself, right? Because somebody else is taking care of it. But the idea is not to let somebody else fill your gap, but yes, you partner up, you make friends with, you have family members, you marry somebody, right, who has different strengths and different weaknesses as you, and you help each other to learn to be their own strength, to fill their own gaps in their lives, right? And yeah, it was something that I thought about a little bit yesterday in walking to the I was planning on walking home yesterday, but I was loaded down and I was exhausted when I left her house, and I still walked halfway home, but then I caught a bus and, right, rode the bus the rest of the way home. And I actually felt pretty good that I had done that, because I had pretty much pooped myself out. Let me have a sip of my coffee. I didn't make a fresh cup of coffee today. I always make a fresh cup of coffee for my live shows, but I made one about a half an hour ago or something. So it's lukewarm, right? But I'm probably only going to have a couple of sips out of it anyway. So at least I'm not wasting coffee. And it's at room temperature. It's drinkable. Okay, how are you doing tonight, Tammy? Oh, Eugene popped in tonight. Oh, Eugene made it in first tonight. Hello, Eugene. I'm good tonight. Thank you so much. And how are you doing? Oh, you love routines, right? But work wise, I have to go with the flow, and I never know what to expect. But you know what? That's a talent too, right? Because that all comes from experience and knowledge that you have already, but you're using it in the moment to ride the waves, right? And if necessary, you can adapt and conquer because you have the know how you have the skills down packed, right? And of course, right, sometimes you have to experiment. Sometimes you have to learn by failing and making mistakes and getting in trouble for not doing something proper, right? That's called training. That's called training, isn't it? And also in doing that, it's the same kind of idea in filling up those holes that we don't, right? We don't have strength in until it actually becomes a strength. And once it becomes a strength, it becomes comfortable. And once it becomes comfortable, what's that? It's time to come out of your comfort zone. It's time to expand. It's a time to, right, stretch a little bit and bring a little bit more onto the plate. And it just makes us stronger that way, right? And it's funny because when I came in, like I said, it was just a few seconds before I hit that go live button, and I had that, right? What are we going to talk about tonight? Well, I guess it was just a little bit of rehash of everything from the past week that we talked about, right? Because we did talk about these things about comfort zones and expanding ourselves. I don't know if we talked about routines this week, but routines are so important. And to know when to cut back on things that are not good for you. And I'm a big believer in baby steps. And I was addicted to my TV, right? I'd stay up all night watching programming, watching old movies, right? I'd be taping my favorite shows and staying up all night, right? Have the whole world to myself, make myself a cup of coffee, something to eat in the middle of the night, right? And this is also something that I've brought as a new routine into my life. I have been on every single kind of diet you can think of since I was a little kid. I've always been the chubby little kid. And then as I grew into an adult, finding ways to cope with life, right? And we all have those coping mechanisms, but mine for sure was food. And I got to be pretty big, 311 pounds at one point. I lost 160 pounds. My whole life changed, and it was my first taste of what positivity could do for me. And I remember how happy I was. And the happier I was, the more wonderful things came into my life. My dream job, my dream husband, right? My dream life, my a home, right? Everything just seemed to go perfect. Of course, it didn't last very long because I didn't know, I didn't have any skills. I wasn't woke to any of these ideas. I didn't recognize that it was my light. It was that positivity that had come into my life that I had created through my own choices that allowed me to make that kind of movement. And then, because I didn't understand that, of course, right? Trip ups, failures, a little bit of weight gain, right? Getting nervous about being a wife, right? Just little issues coming into my life. And of course, the gambling, because again, gambling became a coping mechanism for me, became an addiction for me, and grateful, right? In baby steps and a little bit of help, right? That I got off the video lottery terminals. But to get back onto this new change in my life is I've been on every diet that you can think of, every almost all of them except for Ozempic, the needles and stuff. I think they're needles, right? Or pills or whatever they are, right? I've never even looked into it. I'm not even interested in going down that route. And in fact, I'm okay with the weight that I'm at now, right? I was actually thinking when I still weigh myself every morning because I am kind of excited in the moment because even though I have been on every single diet going on, there was something that I didn't try when it came to losing weight, and that was having a cutoff time from when I could eat. And it's been about, oh my goodness, I would have to say it's got to be over 2 months now that I have cut myself off of eating at 8 p.m., right? And I'm not getting indigestion, even though I'm taking my vitamins and stuff just before I go live, so I don't forget, right? And that they're digested by the time that I go to bed. But I've cut myself off of eating at 8 p.m. and it has benefited me so much. Like so many little things in my life. Like, going to bed and having acid reflux because, I just ate like a half an hour before and now I'm going to bed and that food is still in my gut. And now that I'm laying flat, it all wants to come up my throat again, right? That is 100% gone now, right? And that is absolutely marvelous because that was something, quite often I was worried about. And when you get that acid reflux, it burns because it's all stomach acid, right? Not only that, I've lost 25 pounds almost. Actually, almost exactly 25 pounds in just over 2 months by just cutting myself off of eating at 8 o'clock at night. But it's in putting these routines and these changes into your life when you think, oh, life is comfortable. I'm bored. What do I do next? Well, do something that will improve your life. Like me, throwing out the TV and saying, okay, that's it for TV. I more than make it up, right? Because I'm online all day long for the most part, right? But I'm not paying attention to frivolous stuff. Big Brother doesn't interest me. Survivor doesn't interest me, right? I have really delved into those first interests that I had as a kid, right? I've always loved archaeology, right? And I'm able to dive deep into it now. Well, when I was a kid, I was all about the dinosaurs, right? And when I was a teenager, well, I got into medieval stuff, and then Bronze Age, and Egyptology, and then Canadian history, and then that's when urban exploring came into my life, right? Because these old buildings that I was exploring were the first settlers' homes. Some of them were log houses going back to the early 1800s, and some of them were still standing. And it was so much fun. And then also, me and my dad got me interested in the hobby of metal detecting, and it was something that I carried on my own. I had two metal detectors up until recently, but because I was so involved in, right? Because your flavors change, right? Your interests change, and as you add different routines and a different way of living, that new things come across your path. And because I have a curious mind, I go, oh my goodness, like that stuff was like goodies for me, and my life changed in that. Then, of course, I found mindset because, I had to, I had to balance myself, because otherwise I would just not care. I wouldn't care about my bills, my rent, right? I would just want to be out on the road because that was a passion of mine. I loved that. But I found that, you can't just have one thing in your life, right? You have your dreams, you have your goals, your aspirations, but you also have to have hobbies and interests and people in your life, right? And again, the routines, and in getting comfortable with the routines, then right, you're able to add a little bit more on. And it's interesting. I don't want to add the fact that I'm going to be waking up at 4 o'clock every morning. That's not a good thing. I'll go back to going to bed at 11:30 at night if I find that I am waking up in the middle of the night. But I love change. Even my eating habits, even though I'm not dieting, I've been going on, I think they call it a paleo diet, which is kind of that Mediterranean, Italian, feta cheese and tomatoes and peppers, and right, and just homemade healthy foods. Lots of it is pickled and preserved, and the people in Spain and Italy and Portugal, like, they're some of the people that live to be the oldest. And you guys know that I have a goal set that I want to live to be 114 years old. I don't know why I picked 114 years old. It came into my head. I thought, oh, that's a good age to say bye to everybody, right? And in order to be able to do that, I have to take care of myself. I have to take care of myself emotionally, mentally, physically. And, of course, that I don't have all those lessons. But we live in a world now, right? We have GPT, and we have Google and Gemini. Like, we can just ask these questions, and a whole bunch of information and resources will come to us. And this is the world that we live in. And I think that maybe as we move forward as a whole, like as a world, right? That it's going to be a lot easier for us. But that doesn't mean that we stop learning and we just get that information and we just resource it. No, we're going to practice it. We're going to play with it. We're going to take it in so that we don't forget, because we never know when this world, right? This digital age, this age of AI learning is going to crash. I went into a little bit of panic mode. Was it yesterday or the day before? Oh my goodness, it was like an hour before I was supposed to go live, and YouTube just crashed on me. Everything was there. My accounts were there. Everything was there, but YouTube just crashed, right? And then I just said, well, what do I do? I just went into my feedback in my YouTube studio, and I just said, YouTube, what's going on? I can't get in any suggestions. I can't even pull up my YouTube page. I can manage to get into YouTube studio and into my account, but that's about it. What's going on? I got a live show that I need to do in an hour. And of course, I'm just talking to a bot, so I'm just simplifying, right, the information in short sentences. And then I went, well, it is what it is. I says, I got my phone, right? We can see, and I can get into the studio. Maybe I can still go live, but nobody would be able to see it because YouTube was gone. I found out later, right, that everybody crashed all over the world on YouTube that day. Oh, yeah, okay, so it was last night. Yeah, and I would have to say, I have been on YouTube as a creator for 11 years, and that has never happened before. I didn't panic or anything, right? It is what it is, but I wanted to make sure it wasn't something that I did, right? That I needed to download a new program, or I had to reload or re-download my YouTube account. I didn't know. It just seemed like half of it was there and half of it wasn't. But then after sending off that message to as feedback to the bots, to YouTube, I went and plugged in my kettle so I could make a cup of coffee, and then I came back and it was all up, right? And of course I'm sending gratefuls and telling YouTube and Google how smart and how quick they got us back, because from the time that I noticed until the time that it was fixed, it couldn't have been more than 15 minutes. Like, they were on it. I love YouTube. I really do. I think, and Google, of course, the security with Google. It's why I have a Google Pixel as my phone. It's because, my whole life is wrapped up as a Google girl. I love being a Google girl, right? I'm a Google guide with Google Maps. I do reviews. I do landscape photos of my provincial parks, and I post them to Google Maps. I study. I take my lessons on YouTube. I sit in university forums, and I'll sit and listen to thought leadership all day long. Of course, I'm coming in here and I'm doing my live shows. And I'm entertaining myself, right? I have my own interests. Like I said, I love history. Um, I love thought leadership. I love sitting in different thought leaders in their perspectives, because I believe that, whoever, whatever has divvied out those gifts to all types of people out there. And if we just stuck with just one, then that's just the perspective that we're going to have. And lots of people live their entire life with just that one perspective, for myself, right? Because my parents, right? My dad was spiritual, my mother loved Jesus, right? That maybe because my mother dragged us along to all the churches and denominations that she did. She loved Jesus, but she didn't quite know what denomination she was supposed to be hanging out with. She was kind of a searcher herself. And so we just kind of got tagged along with her in that. And maybe I'm thinking because I lived that way, because I had two parents from opposite spectrums, that I had interests in listening to different perspectives. Maybe my mom's perspective didn't rub me really well. You know, if you guys have hung out with me for any length of time, you know that my mother was my nemissary. Is that what you call it? You know, like nemesis, right? And then, you know, sometimes when we cry out, right, being brought up in Sunday school, and I love Sunday school. I love the Sunday school stories and you know, the Sunday pic or the church picnics and Bible study. I loved all of that. I loved the social aspect about it. I loved the morals and the values that it brought about. And but at the same time, in having that relationship with my mother, I cried out to God, right? I prayed to Jesus, help me, help me. And maybe in that little bit of cynicism, it feels like cynicism, doesn't it? You know, um, I lost that ability to feel that that was possibly the route that I was supposed to be moving in. Now, I didn't understand at that point. I wasn't woke to any of these ideas. I didn't understand spirituality, law of attraction. I didn't understand any of that. I just thought my dad was a sweet man who loved to meditate and loved outer space and right, loved deep discussion and didn't appreciate swearing and brought his kids and his family up on quotes. I didn't understand that that was actually uh what is that? A network, a group? It's not a religion in any way. It's just it's just a way of living, a way of being. But I do believe it is part of being something other than church going, right? Something other than putting your belief into somebody else's hands. And it wasn't till I was well into my 50s that I actually got to meet people like my father, right? Never even saw them in TV, never read about them in books. So I've more than made up for it in the past half a dozen years or so. But, you know, these were things that didn't come across my path ever. And I didn't recognize that as a child, but I did recognize that, right, that I was more like my father than I was my mother. But I would never have found out about those gifts being dispersed out in the world in different networks and different religions. And, you know, not one religion, I believe, gets it right, right? Mankind puts their hands in absolutely everything, but and changes it up. And so I appreciate that, right? I appreciate that. And it makes it so that maybe possibly it was, right, my mother's misunderstanding rather than, you know, a lack of faith in something bigger than me, right? And you can see the way I do this. There is that sensitivity and that awkwardness in that because I don't feel it. I know I have lots of Christians who hang out with me. I have a lot of a lot of thought leadership out there who love Jesus, and right, and a lot of my content is come across my path, and they say, well, give me the thumbs up if you believe in Jesus. And I can't even do that because I'm just taking in the lesson for the lesson itself, and taking in the perspective, which could be 100%. And if I got to the end of the video, 100%, I'm resonating with it at some level. But so much of Christianity comes across my path. I even have a Franciscan, it's another hard word for me, a Franciscan monk that pops in and hangs out with us, and he is so sweet, but I don't sometimes feel that I'm deserving of his presence because I am not full in to Christianity. I don't even resonate wholly as being a Christian in that. But right, I believe that those fingers are in there, and I leave myself open, and I always have. In this process, you have to, right? And I am willing to be course corrected. I'm willing, and maybe that's what I'm doing in searching out different um leadership, different thoughts, different perspectives out there. I have teachers who are padres. I have teachers who are spiritual. I have teachers who are from the Jewish faith, Muslims. I'm trying to think, Hindus, right? I'm just trying to think. I might not have anybody that would be uh, giving me perspectives in the Muslim faith. Maybe that's something that I need to delve into. Usually I pick these things up because my curiosity, but my curiosity just got me right now that I'm dabbling in all these different religions, all these different denominations. But the Muslim faith, and it's not like I don't know Muslims, right? And small aspects just in the conversations, and the things that come across my path, but to actually search out that religion, no, right? And when I was on Instagram, I would have to say, right, 90% of my audience was from the Middle East and India. But I guess India is pretty close, right, to the Middle East. But yeah, it's got my mind. So maybe I'll Google a little something and learn a little something by that. But one thing, like I said, that I did learn is that all those gifts are dispersed out there, because you can see the relatability in every single religion, a lot of it, right? Even the story of Jesus's birth and the different characters in the Bible, and different faiths and different um, ways of believing are so similar. And so, even I was trying to think, they just opened up the Bible. The Ethiopians have the very oldest Bible, older than the Old Testament, and they were the very first, and they were very meticulous in their recording in history, and they just offered up those books, those manuscripts this year, and kind of blew up online and everything because a lot of it was relatable, right? And they were the first ones to document it. And so it does make me wonder. It makes me curious, because even though the Ethiopian manuscripts came out and everybody was just like blown away with the similarities to all the other different religions, there was still a lot of it was different. They even had the description, because That's how far back they actually record, like it's older than the Old Testament, right? Not after the fact, but during the course of, and they even described what he looked like and everything, right? So because Jesus seemed to have traveled to that part of the world. And so they recorded absolutely everything. But when we say mankind has their fingers and everything and changes the way things are, it's just like the manuscripts and the books like of Mary Magdalene and stuff, like, right, those have been rediscovered, but they're not included in the Bible. And that was a political power move, right, by the higher ups to just eliminate it, right? And there were other apostles also who were eliminated from the Bible just because of the way they thought, because of the differences. And, some of those differences and some of those gifts could have been from whoever or whatever. And now they're lost to us because they were totally eliminated from the Bible, right? From the reach of the general public. And there was a time when the Bible wasn't even available for the general public, was it? It was only for the higher ups. It was for the wealthy and the aristocrats, right? So when I take in different perspectives and I see the similarities, it makes me recognize, because it's got to be. If this religion says this and this religion says the exact same thing, you can count that's something that's going to be true, right? It wasn't necessarily stolen, right? It wasn't something that was adapted on. It was just a singular truth out there that was divvied out to all these religions and denominations and faiths, right? But when I say whoever, whatever divvied out the gifts, there were special lessons that were given to each one of these gifts to safeguard. And I believe that's because we're supposed to come together. You hear me say all the time, it takes all kinds to make the world. And so I believe that whoever's in charge wants us to all come together. And once we all come together and we get to actually, amalgamate, assimilate, synthesis, to put all these things together, that the full truth will come forward, right? And it will make it so much easier for us to be able to get along with each other, right? And to keep moving in general, right? In that evolution, that we don't go extinct, right? We are human, right? There's something special about the human, and I recognize that, right? And I would never deny that fact. Actually, I watched a video today, and they said that chimpanzees have made it to the stage of evolution of the Stone Age, right? Because they're using tools, but they have always used tools for rocks, for breaking nuts and stuff, but they're becoming more adept at it. They're using it more differently. They're even teaching orangutans how to make shavings to make actually spearheads and stuff, and scrapers and different knives and tools out of rocks. And then they would give them a little bit of food in a box, and they would tie the box down with this string. And then monkeys would say, "Oh my goodness, right? I could smell there's bananas in that box," right? And they would chip off some flakes and they would test it on their tongue, and then they would just like, right? And just the amazing things that we can learn online. Everything is evolving, and so many amazing discoveries when it comes to history. If I'm not sure if you're a big history fan, but I'm going to suspect that you are a history fan, Tammy, just because you enjoy my urban exploring and my old houses and stuff. How did you like that train station explore? That was one of my favorite ones to do in person. I know it's a little bit different when you watch it in a video, especially when Cindy was editing at that point in time. But I really enjoyed exploring that one. I explored it a few times because it was almost ready to hit the ground the first time I came across it. So every year I would just go for a nice drive to that area of the province, and I would go check on the railway station and see if I could still get into the buildings. But I suspect now that you can't even, I bet you those buildings are on the ground now, right? Especially with the mild winters that we've been having in the past few winters, they haven't been able to solidly freeze. So in that moisture and stuff, things soften up, and any kind of snow weight or something would just make those buildings just crash. And they were in pretty bad shape when I first explored them. Just let me come into the comments here. Yeah, so we were talking about routines. We moved into something else, but insomniac. I have 37 years of insomnia. How does that affect your health, Tammy? Can I ask you how your health is, and if you actually attribute any issues that you might have to not being a good sleeper, or how that affected your work life, because I know you've been a worker all your life, that if it affected the job that you did. And I know probably you'd be a little bit like me. Didn't matter how tired or sore or how bad your life was messed up, if you had a job to do, you would be responsible and you would do your very best to make sure that you could just turn my sweater. I opened up my window, but it's just probably not wide enough. It's going to get really cold in the next few days, so we've got another couple of weeks at least of cold weather. Congratulations, Cindy, with all your great achievements and goals accomplished there, and congrats with your weight loss there. That's spectacular. Yeah, and that wasn't even a diet, Tammy. That was just saying, okay, eating is done at 8 o'clock at night. So if I went to a movie, right, I don't think I would be able to break the routine of right. I love theater popcorn, but it would have to be an afternoon matinee in order for me to have the popcorn, because I'm pretty dedicated. I'm pretty diehard now about cutting off at 8 o'clock. I have gone over by a couple of minutes, right? Because my plate's there. I got home late and I made dinner really quick, and right. So I got a couple of mouthfuls before I can put the plate in the sink, and I look at the clock, it's already 8 o'clock, and I just say, oh, okay, you can have those couple of bites and then put your sink away. So, 5 or 10 minutes maximum after 8 o'clock. But on the norm, I am done by 7:30, right? I'm washing dishes and tidying up for the night because I'm getting ready for my routine of my live show and getting ready for bed and everything. And I like to wake up in the morning to not a mess at the very least, right? I don't even like to have dishes in the sink. When I get up in the morning, I want to make sure that's all clean and ready to go, right? Okay. YouTube, yeah, YouTube crashed. I didn't know if it was yesterday. Some of these days that I have, they just kind of blend into each other, right? And like I said, I got up this morning. I was a little bit kind of spacey in that. But now that I'm thinking about it, I did go to bed a little bit earlier yesterday. I think it was like just after 10, I think, and I was tired because I had worked hard at my sister's house, and I did some walking and running around, and my backpack weighed 100 pounds, maybe not 100 pounds. It probably weighed at least 40 pounds. Plus, I had bags to carry, and I had a coffee in my hand. Yeah, I was tired when I got home yesterday. And but I was happy to be home, and we did our live show, and I shut her down early, and I said, "Okay, Cindy, you're tired tonight. Go to bed." And now that I'm thinking about it, that's probably what it is, right? But we sure are going to get a few more days of cold weather in the peg to was dedicated to my job when I was working. So glad to finally be retired. Oh, you're retired now. Oh my goodness. Debbie, thank you so much. So you're here from Winnipeg. Oh my goodness. I don't get a lot of people from Winnipeg come and hang out with me. Maybe sometimes my sisters will pop in just to say hi. But welcome, welcome, Debbie. I appreciate that you popped in today. Awesome. Yeah, so we were just talking about routines, and then right, and then when you get comfortable with your routines, about expanding a little bit, and then I just ended up going off into right thought leadership and comparisons. But that is the way it goes with me sometimes. And I did have one of those days where I just felt like the day was a little bit different, right? And that's okay, right? Tonight I'm just going to stay up until my regular 11:30 because I want to sleep good. I want to sleep solid all night long. I've always been a good sleeper, and I don't want to mix the routines up if it's not going to serve me, right? Then at the same time, it was only one night. So, maybe I could try it again, go to bed a little bit earlier and see if it affects me in any way. And then at that point, decide whether or not I want to continue bringing it down. But, a lot of these switch ups in our lives, and it's not about doing it like a 360, like this is the way I am today, and then tomorrow you're living a totally different way. Sometimes it's just in those small changes, just in those little ones. Like I said, one of the very first things that I learned to do is just get up and make the bed, right? And that's how I built accountability and routine. And then, after that, it was just like, okay, you're going to bed at midnight now. You're not going to bed at 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning anymore, right? And then also in getting comfortable with things, then you can recognize, well, okay, it's not hard work, it's not stressful, right? You feel comfortable, it's easy now. Now we can add more onto the plate, right? And we can expand and get a little bit better at something, right? Bring in a new hobby, a new interest, or we can let go of things, and that's amazing too, right? Lots of people look back at that time when COVID was going on, and a lot of people that messed up their jobs, their careers, it messed up their family. Grandparents had to learn to get online and FaceTime, otherwise they wouldn't get to see their kids or their grandkids because their kids or grandkids lived on the other side of the country. But for me, when COVID hit and we got shut down in the beginning, and we got shut down for about two months, didn't we? And I spent a lot of time on my own. I didn't go visit my family. I didn't do anything. I just entertained myself online. And oh boy, in entertaining myself, it wasn't even entertaining myself. I was applying myself. So that served me. But in the biggest way that it did serve me, it shut down the bars, and it shut down the lottery machines, the slot machines in the bars. And that got me off of gambling. I have not gambled now. Oh my goodness, how long has it been? 6 years. I haven't gambled, not even a lottery ticket, not even I bet you, right? And I'm so proud of myself because it was it was a scary thing for me. It really wreaked havoc on my life. It contributed to my marriage falling apart. It put me into such a negative state that it was impossible for me to be optimistic, except in, if you had a job for a little while, then it was always customer service that you would put on that fake smile. I couldn't even give proper smiles because it was so depressing, because I was destroying my life. I lost my car. I lost my, oh my goodness, I was juggling bills, almost lost the roof over my head. And that would have been absolutely terrifying. But when, the world got shut down there for those few months there, oh my goodness, it was just what I needed. I would have to say it saved my life in a way, right? And not a lot of people can say that because they didn't apply themselves in that time that they had. That time they stressed out. How am I going to pay the bills? I'm going to lose my apartment. And of course, I worried about that stuff too, right? But I took advantage of that because I'm here by myself. I was in my apartment by myself. What am I going to do? I can't go out. I'm not going to like go to the grocery store and wander around the grocery store and allow myself to catch something, right? And I never caught COVID, and I was in customer service. I was around people all the time in the little thrift store job that I had that put the roof over my head, right? But having that time to really sort myself out, it really put me on the right track. And if nothing else, that gift of not gambling, it gave me that little bit of positive into my life, that relief, that, oh my goodness, I'm so grateful to be off of those machines, right? And in that little bit of positivity, I was able to bring a little bit more in. And then I found that wonderful job that I had for so long in that little thrift store. And it just, I practiced my craft. Of course, in the beginning, you're practicing your craft, but then it became so natural and it became real. And the lessons were just hitting me right and left, and it hasn't stopped since, right? And again, in that comfortability where we get comfortable in things, and having those lessons, as soon as you feel that way, it's time to do a little bit more, right? Add a little bit more on the plate, but also we can take off the plate like I did with the gambling, right? And that serves just as well. Oh my goodness, sometimes even better, right? And I have a very addictive personality, and I'm grateful for the things. I when I was a young adult, I got hooked on Halls, which is a cough drop, and I ate at least 6 packages of Halls every day. Oh my goodness. I was married at the time. Oh my goodness. I couldn't imagine, right? That medical smell on me all the time. And I just didn't suck on those things. I crunched on them. And I spent a lot of money in keeping my teeth, because I did so much damage because there's just so much sugar in the Halls. But also, I was a smoker and I quit smoking. And I didn't do these things because I had to. I did these things because I wanted to, that I knew that it would bring positive things into my life, right? And, I crunched ice too. I remember in my early 20s or my early 30s that I was a huge ice cruncher. And that did havoc on my teeth too. But, when you come from trauma, when you have dynamic families, and sometimes you grow up and you need things just to manage. And, I would have to say, I'm not hating on myself for, right, the pink ice donut with the sprinkles, or the cigarettes, or the BLTs, because in the moment, they truly did save my life as much as they destroyed my life. It was a change, right? And lots of times in that gambling, especially when you lose the bill money and the grocery money and the rent and stuff, it puts you in that adapt and conquer and fix mode. And there were lessons in that too, right? So I'm not beating myself up, but I am grateful that I recognize my limitations. I recognize my coping mechanisms, and I'm grateful most of all that I've been able to overcome a lot of them. Now, the pink ice donuts with the sprinkles, I don't know, right? But it's a challenge, right? And you adapt and conquer the best that you can. And I found something that works for me. And I've lost 25 pounds just in the past couple of months. And I'm not eliminating anything except putting that boundary on myself that I can't eat past 8 o'clock at night. And right, 25 pounds is gone. And I'm just saying it like, oh my goodness, right? Because that's a lot of weight just in a couple of months. But it also makes me take note of, right? There's no acid reflux. I was eating at 11 o'clock at night and going to bed with a full stomach, right? Probably not sleeping as well as I sleep now, not taken into consideration last night, but it's something in our practice. And if we at least try, right? If I didn't try to quit smoking, I would still be a smoker, wouldn't I? You know, if I didn't, I could have gone online and did online gambling, right? I love Poker Stars, right? That's what got me addicted to the lottery machines when they came out, because I was already gambling online. I was doing tournaments. I was a great poker player too. And I loved poker. I was good at it. I would have been awesome. And I believe that if I and my sister, youngest sister Carolyn, she still does the poker, right? And she's at that stage where she could do tournaments if she wanted to, but she doesn't have the mentality or the outside kind of aspect about herself to be social that way. And even though, right, she loves poker, she does it online. So when she's talking to people and stuff, she's just talking in the chat. Nobody's actually seeing what she looks like unless she's using a thumbnail, which is possible. I haven't been into her site. I don't do anything with gambling, right? I am done with that. That's not an aspect of my life. And I'm grateful for the things that I've been able to overcome. But that was only in my own choices, right? Just saying, okay, that's my last cigarette, or oh my goodness, right? What am I gonna do? Right? I'm locked up at my house for a few months here. Let's apply ourselves in the lessons. I can't go off to the bar and play slot machines. And then to recognize that I was feeling better, that my bills were still not good, but I was, because by that time I had already dug the hole so deep that there was no way I was going to be coming out of it without the miracle. And thank goodness I got the miracle, which was, right, a job that I could apply myself at. And I remember I didn't even want to take that position. I really thought it was beneath me, right? It was something I didn't want to do. And I tell you, it was probably one of the best jobs I ever had. I enjoyed that job just as much as I enjoyed working in the bars, right? Or even I had a cafeteria job too that I absolutely loved, right? Because they were social, and also were they not even social, but they were jobs that allowed me to be myself. I didn't have to pretend to be somebody else. And that's, I think, helped me out lots too, to recognize that I didn't have to be somebody that I wasn't. And that's something that's really great about hospitality, customer service. And I would suggest anybody who's an introvert or shy that, if there's any way that you can get yourself into one of those two jobs, right? Whether you're a waitress or a bartender, whether you work in a clothing store, right? That you get yourself in a position where you're in constant connection with others. It will serve you well. I promise you. It's right. It for a lot of people that doesn't interest them, but you never know until you try, right? And if it benefits you, you can guarantee that you'll love it, that you'll like it, that at the very least you'll appreciate it. Okay, you guys know the score if you've hung out with me before. Oh, Earl's here too. Oh my goodness. Hello, Earl. I hope you're having a great night. Oh my goodness. It's so nice to see you. Um, I am from Winnipeg. I've been retired since 2016. My youngest sister passed from cancer, and I got my job to look after her until her passing. Oh my goodness. I love the caregivers, right? And you come to hang out with me. That's a great thing because people who hang out with me are caregivers. We're all, it amazes me how many caregivers hang out with me, right? And in my own fashion, I consider myself a bit of a caregiver too. But you know what, right? Thank you guys so much for your service to your family, to your friends, to your next door neighbors, like Tammy does, right? Lots of times that we find ourselves in situations that, that our own family has worn themselves out physically, emotionally, or mentally. And, you never deny your own, right? In the end, that's all you've got. And it is in that ownership of that relationship that I don't know. It makes me so proud that I have you guys hang out with me so much. I don't know why I get the caregivers, but I sure do appreciate that I do because there's all kinds of groups that I could have in here, right? And you guys are always so kind and so considerate to me. So I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for popping in, Debbie. It was really nice of you to pop in tonight. And that's the way it goes, right? Oh my goodness. Yeah, it never surprises me, anymore. And yeah, I'd like to see where this is going to be in 10 years, or like when I said when I came into my life today, right? I'm going to be 114 years old. I won't be rocking in my rocking chair, but I might be moving around a little bit in my office chair because, as long as I can sit here and yibber yabber, right? And I'm not demeaning what I bring to the table by calling it yibber yabbering, but it is in those conversations, right? I believe in just regular conversations, and that we can just learn from each other, right? And not just learn from each other, to appreciate each other and to recognize, right? It takes all kinds to make the world. It truly does. Okay, you guys know the score. We're just going to go in. It's a powerful word. These are 54 powerful words. We're just going to go into a word for a few minutes, and then Cindy's going to call it a night. And what does Earl say here? And don't forget to thank me for being the official catch of the year for women. Okay, congratulations to you, Earl. Congratulations to you. That's pretty good. Let's take one just from the middle here. I usually go for the middle if I can. Let's just pick the last card behind here. Perception. Oh my goodness. We were talking about that tonight, weren't we? When we were talking about different perspectives when it comes to different religions. So the word we got tonight, what does it say here? Perception. Perception is the learning process to a perspective. Remember what I was saying, that I sit in a lot of thought leadership. I'm sitting here and I'm listening to different thought leaders out there, whether it's in religion, whether it's in um, the learning categories, whether it's in history, that I sit in and I siphon through all of that. Just because somebody is saying something to me, it doesn't mean that it's true. We have to feel it out for ourselves. And part of what I'm doing here is to feel out all the different perspectives, to feel out what's going to be true for me, right? Because perception is actually, right, it's part of the learning process. It's being willing to be course corrected. It's being willing to learn something new. And you might believe a certain way in one moment, but in sitting in one conversation, that conversation being influenced, you got to remember the difference between influence and manipulation. You got to feel it out, right? Because a lot of what's going on, I have to say, a great lot of what's going on online right now and media in general, even in our own entertainment on TV, it's all meant to get our attention, right? The commercials, right? It's all meant to sell us something, right? Even me, in coming in here and having these conversations and having the lessons just come out in a conversation, right? That is something for you to kind of siphon through. And I might not hit it on the mark every single day. I might not hit it on the mark even once during the course of the week. But maybe during the course of a conversation, there might be just one thing that you might say, oh my goodness, I didn't even think of it that way. And then you think about it and you go, oh my goodness, that's so true, right? It just hits home. It just answers so many questions for me. But unless we're willing to sit in on somebody else's perspective, right? In that perception, right? Listen in on somebody else's perspective, because if it's a perspective, that's a truth, that's a belief for somebody, right? In the process of learning, in the process of sitting in on somebody else's insight, that's a perception, right? That's not a belief for me unless I get that. Are you kidding me? That's what I've been doing all this time, and feeling it out to make sure it's a truth, and right, that it's actually good influence and not somebody is just trying to turn your head that way when you're really supposed to be going that way, that somebody's not trying to get us to believe and think and feel and buy and do what they want to do, right? That perception is only a perception until it hits us, until it becomes a part of us, until it becomes a belief, right? Like that perception that I had, that, that it was okay to be nocturnal and stay up all night and then sleep all day. That was a terrible thing to do to myself, right? I'd miss all the beautiful sunny days. I'd miss hanging out with my friends, right? My family, because, their day's coming to an end when my day is just starting. So it was an amazing thing for me to recognize in somebody's little influence, to go, oh my goodness, I can try that, see if that works for me. And now that perception of maybe has become a perspective. And that perspective is my perspective. That perspective is my truth now. And not necessarily just my truth, it's just my truth. No, it makes me feel like I belong to a network or a group that feels and thinks the same way. And right, and that's community. That's right, being part of a community, but not necessarily involving ourselves in a community. And that's a totally different story, because lots of us were not at that point. For me, I've just started to become accustomed and comfortable in keeping company with myself, hanging out with myself, enjoying life on my terms. And I appreciate that so much. And it's not something that was really a part of my life until maybe 7 or 8 years ago. But oh my goodness, in just changing that perception and having a new perspective on what it means to be happy and to be your own person, oh my goodness, my life has changed. Now, what does it say again? Perception is the learning process to a perspective. Oh my goodness, we hit it on the button again. Weren't we talking about that? Right? When I was saying about all that thought leadership from all different parts of the world and all different topics, whether it was, well, not really politics. Politics have never been my thing, but different religions, different aspects of culture and history, right? And to be able to sit in different perceptions and be able to build the perspective that I have now, it's pretty cool. And that doesn't mean that I'm not done yet, right? There are things about me that are perspectives that are solid, that they're beliefs, that right, you couldn't pull them away from me if right my life depended on it. But there's still quite a bit out there that I'm not quite sure about, right? When I said whatever or whoever, that's still in the process of perception. And that's not a true perspective in this moment. I believe there's something or someone. But what that is, I'm still in that search in my perceptions of what's to come, right? We are just in the beginning of this age of AI learning, right? Everybody gets to have a voice if they want to have a voice. And I sit in and right, I take in a lesson and two, and sometimes I pick up on it. Sometimes I go, oh, I don't know about that, but it was interesting. It was entertaining, right? See you on the beach, right? And never come back to it again. Lots of times you can't just do that in the first one because, like I said, you might be just coming in to my live, and I just might not have hit it on the mark today, right? But I sure would appreciate it if you had given me one more chance that maybe tomorrow I might get it right. And that's what this whole process of life is all about, isn't it? Right? I stumble along just like everybody else, and I'm creating the best Cindy, best human that I can be. But that doesn't mean anybody else has to be like me. We're all uniques, right? Okay, you guys. That's got to be my good cheer for tonight. That was interesting again. You guys have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.